The wind howled like a warning that night, and something felt terribly wrong out on that lonely prairie. You ever get that feeling, like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to break? Well, that's exactly how it felt for a small family on the edge of survival. Snow had buried their hopes, their crops failed, and even their fire burned weak. And Christmas was coming, but there was no food left to celebrate anything at all. Not even a crust of bread remained in their empty wooden cupboard. The children tried to smile, but their eyes carried a hunger no child should know. Their mother whispered prayers, hoping for a miracle that seemed impossible now. And just when all hope felt lost, a stranger was already riding through the storm. A lone rancher with a quiet past, heading toward something he didn't understand yet. You see, out here in the Wild West, survival wasn't guaranteed for anyone. Every winter tested not just strength, but faith and the will to go on. This family had already lost so much before the snow even arrived. Their father had fallen ill, leaving the burden on a weary mother's shoulders. She worked tirelessly, but the land refused to give anything back that season. Each night grew colder, each day felt heavier, and hope slowly faded away. The children asked innocent questions she couldn't bring herself to answer. What do you say when there's nothing left to give but empty promises? Still, she held them close, pretending everything would somehow be all right. Because sometimes, hope is the only thing keeping a heart from breaking. Now, let me tell you about the rancher, because his story matters too. He wasn't just any man riding through the snow-covered hills that night. He had spent years alone, avoiding people and burying painful memories deep. Some said he was cold-hearted, others believed he was just misunderstood entirely. But deep down, he carried a kindness he rarely allowed anyone to see. That evening, he had planned to spend Christmas alone like always before. A simple fire, a quiet meal, and silence as his only companion. But fate has a strange way of rewriting plans when you least expect it. And as his horse pushed through the storm, something caught his attention suddenly. A faint light flickering in the distance, barely visible through the heavy snowfall. He could have ignored it, like he ignored most things in life. But something about that fragile glow made him slow down his horse. Have you ever felt pulled toward something you couldn't explain at all? That's exactly what happened as he turned toward the distant cabin quietly. The closer he got, the more he sensed something wasn't right there. No smoke rising properly, no sound of laughter, just silence and struggle. He dismounted slowly, his boots crunching against the frozen ground beneath him. And when he knocked, the door opened with hesitation and quiet fear. A tired mother stood there, her eyes filled with both hope and doubt. She didn't know if this stranger would bring help or more trouble instead. Inside that small cabin, the air felt colder than the storm outside. The rancher noticed immediately something no one should ever have to see. Children huddled together, trying to stay warm with barely anything covering them. A nearly empty table stood as proof of days without proper food or comfort. He didn't ask many questions, because sometimes answers are painfully obvious already. Instead, he simply stepped back outside without saying a single word. The mother felt her heart sink, thinking even this stranger had turned away. But what she didn't know was that he had already made a decision. One that would change not only their lives, but his as well forever. Because sometimes, kindness doesn't come with words, it comes with action. The rancher rode back into the storm, disappearing into the darkness once again. The family thought that was the end, just another passing moment of false hope. But hours later, something unexpected echoed through the quiet winter night. The sound of hooves returning, stronger this time, carrying something heavy behind. The door opened again, and what they saw left them completely speechless. He brought food, more than they had seen in weeks or even months. Fresh bread, meat, warm blankets, and even a small Christmas surprise. The children's eyes lit up like stars breaking through a cloudy sky. And for the first time in days, laughter filled that broken little cabin. It wasn't just food, it was hope being delivered right to their door. Now let me ask you something, have you ever witnessed a moment like that? A single act of kindness that changes everything in an instant forever? Because that's what this was, something far deeper than a simple gesture. The rancher didn't stop there, he stayed and helped them prepare the meal. He fixed their fire, repaired what he could, and shared stories quietly. At first, the family felt unsure, still adjusting to his sudden presence there. But slowly, walls began to break down between strangers, becoming something more. They weren't just people sharing a meal, they were becoming something like family. And that night, Christmas came alive in a way none of them expected. Not through gifts, but through connection, compassion, and shared humanity. The children gathered close as he told stories of the open plains. They laughed, forgetting their hunger, forgetting the fear that once surrounded them. The mother watched quietly, tears forming as she saw something beautiful unfolding. This man who arrived as a stranger was now bringing warmth into their lives. And maybe, just maybe, into his own heart as well that very night. Because sometimes, helping others heals parts of ourselves we didn't know were broken. He found himself smiling more than he had in years of lonely living. And for once, the silence that once comforted him no longer felt necessary. Instead, he welcomed the noise, the laughter, the simple joy of togetherness. Because in that cabin, he found something he thought he had lost forever. Morning came slowly, with sunlight gently touching the snow-covered land outside. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet and peaceful new beginning. The rancher prepared to leave, as he had always done before in life. But something felt different now, something he couldn't ignore or walk away from. The children looked at him, not as a stranger, but as someone important. The mother thanked him, her voice filled with more emotion than words could express. And then came a moment that changed everything once again completely. She asked him to stay, not just for a day, but for longer. Because sometimes, people don't just need help, they need someone to stay. And that invitation carried more meaning than anything he had ever heard before. He hesitated, because old habits are hard to break, especially loneliness. But deep down, he knew something had shifted inside him overnight. This wasn't just about helping anymore, it was about belonging somewhere real. Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads like that in life? Where one choice leads back to loneliness, and the other toward connection. He looked around the cabin, now filled with warmth and quiet happiness. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like leaving anymore. So he made a choice, one that surprised even himself completely. He stayed, not as a visitor, but as part of something new. A family that was once broken, now slowly becoming whole again together. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became something much deeper. The rancher worked the land, helping restore what had once been lost. The children learned from him, laughing and growing stronger every single day. The mother found support, no longer carrying the burden entirely alone anymore. And together, they rebuilt not just a home, but a future filled with hope. The land began to respond, as if even nature believed in second chances. Crops grew, animals returned, and life started to feel possible again. All because one man chose to care when it truly mattered most. Because sometimes, the smallest decision creates the biggest changes in life. And this was one of those moments that would never be forgotten. Years later, that same cabin stood stronger than ever before in history. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was a place full of memories. Laughter echoed through its walls, replacing the silence that once lived there. The rancher was no longer alone, and he never wanted to be again. He had found purpose, love, and something far more valuable than gold. The children grew up, carrying his lessons and kindness into their own lives. And every Christmas, they remembered that night that changed everything forever. The night when hope arrived on horseback through a raging winter storm. The night when a stranger became something far more meaningful than expected. He became family, in the truest sense of the word possible. So let me tell you something before we end this story tonight. Sometimes, miracles don't look like magic, they look like ordinary people choosing kindness. Sometimes, the hero isn't the strongest, but the one who shows up. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment to change everything completely. Maybe you've been that family, struggling and hoping for something better someday. Or maybe, just maybe, you can be that rancher for someone else. Because this world needs more people willing to care, even when it's hard. And who knows, you might just find something you were missing all along. Something called connection, something called belonging, something called family. And trust me, that's the greatest gift anyone could ever receive. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. Hit that like button so more people can discover stories that truly matter. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in his place? Would you have kept riding, or stopped to change someone's life forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your own stories of kindness too. Because every voice matters, and every story deserves to be heard. Share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. And until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep believing always. Because you never know whose life you might change along the way.